You better hear! You better hear! You better hear from me! You better hear!
Mention Southend-on-Sea in casual conversation to anybody that doesn't live here, and it's not unlikely that the response will be a condescending snigger about Essex girls, white van man, or a reality TV show The Only Way is Essex. But there's always been more to Southend than these often grotesque stereotypes. Close enough to the heart of London to get there in under an hour on the sea-to-sea line, Southend is also far enough away to have evolved its own distinctive cultural heritage and identity. In 2022, I published Southend-on-Sea, a book documenting the alternative history of the city as told through the fanzines, people's papers and community magazines made in the town over the last 50 years. A history from below, unlikely to be documented in the minutes of Southend Borough Council meetings or the archives of the Evening Echo newspaper. During my research, I gathered a wealth of material, including artefacts, oral histories and interviews, several of which I wasn't able to use for the book, but which opened up many portals into an otherwise lost or undocumented non-official other history of this city. Now is the time to tell these stories. The You Better Hear podcast is an expansion of the territory initially opened up by the book project, capturing, amplifying and celebrating these hidden voices. The places, faces, spaces and traces, including Southend's rich music history, the rock, punk, jazz, reggae, free improv and experimental scenes, and its clubs and venues. The LGBTQ histories, women's histories, art and cultural projects, protest, activism and anti-racist resistance, street theatre events and much more, linking this with the practice of present-day local zine makers and community and arts activists.
Here for me!
Imagination. Actor is disguised as hero, anti-hero. This is the epic of Rhapsody, it's now here. Now endure crude, replacing imagination.
Hello, and welcome to the latest edition of the You Better Hear podcast. Shaped by his working class upbringing in Southend-on-Sea during the 1970s and early 80s, Marc Garrett developed and continues to explore a creative practice through making analogue and digital art and music with a commitment to challenging institutional hierarchies. Moving away from the town in 1987, he got involved with street art and pirate radio in Bristol, working with the likes of Portishead and Massive Attack. In 1996, Mark and his partner Ruth Catlow co-founded Furtherfield, an artist-led community resisting the commercialisation of the art world, curating over 50 exhibitions in their Finsbury Park gallery space. Returning to Southend in 2012, Mark has authored or co-produced several publications of critical cultural writings, including Frankenstein Reanimated, Conversations with Artists in Dystopian Times, and Artists Rethinking the Blockchain. In January 2026, his latest book, Feral Class, was published by Minor Compositions Press. It's a highly readable, deeply personal and thought-provoking exploration of his early years, chronicling the beginnings of his journey as a working-class artist navigating an arts world that is often elitist and exclusive. Mark and I both attended Cecil Jones High School in Southend during the 1970s, although we didn't actually get to know each other until we met and connected as part of Southend's thriving punk and alternative scene in the early 1980s, hanging out in places like the Cliff Pub and the Pink Toothbrush in Rayleigh. In late 2025, I spent an afternoon in Felixstowe, where Mark and Ruth now live, chatting about the book, our old punk days, and Furtherfield's philosophy of open source culture and radical collaboration.
I've been working in art, technology and social change for nearly 30 years, and then I realised when my mum died about 5 years ago, and then I had cancer, that it was probably time to reflect on some of the adventures that I had in an early age regarding my relationship with mum and the rest of the family. And so basically the other thing about the idea of feral class is that we were a low income family, or hardly any income family, that was surviving and struggling in the 70s, and come from a council estate as well. And basically we didn't really have a kind of structure like working class traditions do, you know, like unions and but what begin to notice that there's a different type of class, if we can forgive me for using the word class, but that didn't quite fit in, like travellers, homeless people, druggies maybe, experimental musicians that are doing odd stuff, you know, people that are discovering their sexuality as outsiders of a kind of normative life, and suddenly you begin to realise that you're part of a kind of community of lots of oddballs that didn't quite fit into the templates of even working class, let alone middle class. So in a sense, that's what that book's about, and it's about it's almost like an auto-ethnographic study of the culture that I grew up in. There's lots of different stories, quite interesting things like regarding my mum. She wanted to call me Marcus Brutus at the hospital that I was being born at, because she hated men, and because she's had lots of troubled relationships with men, and I've grown up with troublesome men, obviously, and so Marcus Brutus obviously is the patriarch killer, Caesar. So, but the nurse convinced her otherwise, so I just mark M-A-R-C instead. So the US was cut off, and the Brutus was extricated from the name I would have had. So that's kind of like the start of a kind of living experience that gives you an example of what my mum liked. Like for instance, she worked on the Wall of Death at the Kursaal as a motor cyclist, which will be going around this wooden wall at tremendous speed, spinning around, and she stopped when she had an accident, and so that was all in Even Echo at the time. We used to get on really well with black families because they seemed like outsiders, but that's not why we got on with them literally. We got on with them just because they were good mates, and had scar parties at an early age. They would come along with DJs from Jamaica and into our place, and they just fill the whole flat up that we were in. This was before we moved to a council house, and it would just be ska for 3 days, and all the men would be dressed in suits, and they looked really stylish, and they were dancing, just brilliant dancers, and that was quite a strong influence at a young age of kind of independent grassroots music, and where you build your own culture with your families and other people, and where it goes beyond a prescribed way of living. So yeah, that's a good example of an early age which taught me that people make their own culture and their own lives beyond being given music or given identities or stuff like that. quite involved in the punk scene in Southend as well. Got to meet a lot of people that are doing really interesting music, and it kind of opened up a whole door of creativity, especially sort of punk, post-punk, and going to a lot of clubs. Very grounded culture of lots of people doing really interesting stuff, and it was quite normal, really. You know, where you build your own culture on your own terms with your friends, and that's something that probably, hopefully, is happening now, but I don't see much of it. We used to have lots of fights with skinheads in clubs. Rayleigh's in Crocs was one of them, where lots of them used to come in a big coach deliberately to fight from Romford. So we're all dancing away to kind of neo-romantic and punk and whatever, and gay disco. And then suddenly you get like 20 skinheads come in and just start to fight. And but then, thankfully, a lot of the punks didn't stand for it and chased them out and smashed all the windows to the coach as they all went home. So that was quite fun. I suppose I could see what was right and wrong, and kind of, for a start, I knew that my two fathers were wrong, and I knew the women and the girls that I kind of grew up with were actually quite intelligent and made more sense. And the men were just shouting and hitting people, and I just thought, well, I don't really want to end up like that. That's shit. I don't want to be like that. And because there's so much of it in the world, then and now, it's just it's soulless. And so for me, making connections outside of the family, even outside of my own kind of designated class, educated me. I mean, another good example is when I bunked for about 9 months out of school when I was about 13. I got quite depressed because I wasn't, it was post 11 plus time, and I just got so disappointed because the school was so chaotic and no one was learning anything, and I just thought, I'm going to go to the library instead. So I just went to the library every day, and they didn't even notice I was gone. I wanted to learn. I was writing, reading books, making loads of notes of all kinds of stuff that I wasn't allowed to be taught at school, like politics, psychology, all kinds of stuff, and art and literature. And I just wanted, all this stuff was not, I wasn't being told about, and my family definitely wasn't talking about it. So the only place to go to was the library, and suddenly I took that on as my school, and so I'd go there like school hours every day until the truant officer, who had quite a reputation, grabbed me and took me to the school. But during that period of time, they had a changeover of headmasters, and so the last one I think was called Mrs. Heap, who was definitely a bit like it was like Thatcher and Mary Whitehouse rolled into one. And then there was Mr. Ennington, who was this German teacher, who I just met, which the truant officer took me to see. Mr. Ennington said, "Let's sit down. What's going on?" And I just put my plastic bags with all my information on the desk. I said, "That's what's going on. I'm not learning that in here." And he read it all, and he said, "If you stay at the school and continue to your O levels, I'll mark all this stuff immediately if you come back." And he marked it. He knew all the stuff I was like Frasier and like the Golden Dawn, and some anarchist writings, Emma Goldman, and loads of stuff, but also art as well I was looking at, and so and he just marked it all and referenced other books that I might be interested in, and so I the next week I went out and stole the books that he suggested from different shops, and ordered the ones that I couldn't steal from the library. how my art teacher inspired me. I became known for my artistic skills on the council estate and frequently drew pets and families, which occasionally earned me a small sum of money and helped me to get to know our neighbours. We enjoyed chatting away about local issues and politics, and I enjoyed making the art. Many of the drawings were life-size. I'd be sticking blocks of paper onto the walls, so I had a flat and large surface area to work on. I was about 14 years of age, and then decided to bring some of this work into the art room and share it with my art teacher and peer pupils. I also brought in other more experimental artworks into the class. For some reason, my art teacher decided I was an affront to civilization and thus chose to rip up all of my work in front of the class in slow motion, saying, "This is not the kind of work I want to see in my classroom." The whole class, including myself, fell silent. My first emotion was that something powerful must be going on in the art I was making to cause such a display of violence. Then I felt a deep disappointment with my teacher. I thought he was better than this. It also felt like a personal attack. A fully grown adult being aggressive towards me in response to particular activities was nothing new. It was usually men. One example was my stepfather when I beat him at chess. His response was to hurl the board against the wall whilst directing many expletives at me. I was only 12, and even though winning was a satisfying experience, it was also unsettling. At a young age, older mates put themselves in competition with me for reasons I was never sure of. One of the reasons I got on well with females was because I could relax more easily with them. I didn't need to prove myself in any way. We'd just talk about all kinds of things and enjoy shared activities. My mother was really upset with what happened. The next day she turned up unannounced and punched the teacher on the cheek, shouting that if he bullied me again he'd have more than her to deal with, meaning that my stepfather would visit the school to sort him out. Watching my 5'3" mum wallop a man over 6 foot was quite a sight. It was all very embarrassing. However, I was reassigned to another art class with a different art teacher who happened to be a woman who was much more open to pupils being explorative in class. The incident could have affected me badly, yet it had the reverse effect. I had already been researching at the local library a year before, but it gave me the extra curiosity to make and study more art. I had realised the art was freedom and could open doors into the psyche and emotions that other forms could not do for me. While it felt necessary to possess a certain critical understanding of the world I was growing up in, it also felt essential to allow room for one's imagination to pursue the making of art. From this early experience, I've always felt that there was a war against imagination. To me, it's a very flexible word, what an artist is. It's very much, I think it's about someone using their imagination to explore the world or see the world differently, and create something from it that doesn't fit into modes of existence that questions and that asks questions, and it can be beautiful and ask a question if you know, and it's a form of expression, and also I think some crafts can be classed as art as well. I don't really go by this high art idea. I think punk was really good for that, and I remember Malcolm McLaren saying a really good thing, like a perfect painting. What's the point of having a perfect painting? Because if you've got a perfect painting, then there's no point painting anymore. And I just and you're saying that's what life is like. So if you perfection, in a way, art for me is about exploring imperfection and seeing what comes out of that, because I think that's where the most human elements are, and they don't have to be literal. They can just be explored in many different ways. So I just got no stamp on what art should look like and the way it should act or be. But I think people, as long as they're exploring it in a, I dare not say the word genuine, but in a way that feels true to themselves, I think art comes out of that. And I think like punk was good, was a kind of, also art doesn't just exist within a framework. It's a form of expression that needs to come out, and it's in a collective expression, and it's a kind of collective genius rather than traditional hierarchical genius that's we've been colonially imposed for years. And so I just think, like, you can have a collective genius which is a movement like drum and bass, or you can have a small movement that creates a kind of alternative scene somewhere. To me, that's art. It doesn't have to be an object. It could be a shared expression that creates something that wasn't there before, and that needed to be there. And in a way, a lot of modernists were doing that, but they were doing it in the form of modernity as part of a kind of industrial revolution process. But really, I would say, like, post-60s, art was anyone's, really. And if you can just say you're an artist and do something, and it wasn't to be an artist, it was just to find that space where you can look at things differently and not be within a framework that's dictated to you.
Took over our minds, faded line. Two young bodies warm and lose thought, urge our memory. As breath never tires, never retires, unquestioned, brine, never stopping to ask why. Never ask, does this person outside of me want to? It's true that now and again my rate jumps goes down. Pain is like a rust down. It remains unseen, it takes one hell of a sturdy hammer down. Once you have pulled it out, the rust stays on. But once in a while, love seems all the right. As long as you don't die in line. Love is beauty travel, further than one can imagine. Across seas, one can imagine. Across seas, one can imagine. Across seas, well took over our minds, faded line. Two young bodies warm and lose thought, urge our memory. As breath never tires, never retires, unquestioned.
A couple that we met who bought some of my work, actually, which is really nice, because no one bought any of my work then. Then they moved to a farm outside, about 12 miles outside Bristol, and they said, did myself and Jane want to go and move there and get out of Southend? And I said, yes, I just need a change. And moving on, just because I didn't really know what to do in Southend, and I've got so many memories there, and I just needed to make some new ones, and so this seemed like a good opportunity, and we went there. And then within a year's time I moved into Bristol with Jane, and then a whole new adventure started with Pirate Radio, street art. We were doing stuff with Massive Attack and Portishead on our radio station, and street art with Banksy, although we didn't know they were Banksy at the time or who that was. We were all doing it, and it all looked very similar, and suddenly that motif carried on elsewhere, what we were doing, because it was a collective action originally, it wasn't just one individual. And so that's where I learned hacking at that point, where I learned about analog hacking and digital hacking, like pirate television as well. And so that was the beginning of forming a kind of art context that wasn't traditional. To me, hacking isn't just digital, it's very much a way of life. It's about finding your way around systems that are blocking you. And I think that kind of links to feral class as well, because like a lot of kind of travellers and people that have to find their own way to survive have to think differently and behave differently, and also see things differently to be able to kind of exist in between the cracks of life, which other people kind of ignore. So in a way, hacking is a much more wider concept and not just like what everyone imagines. That's what hacking is. You're making something that's been designed for you that blocks you into something else, and it doesn't have to be technology. But in a way, hacking and also free and open source culture is actually a very positive thing, and it always has been, because it's about people who haven't got much money that are actually using technology as a resource, and you can set up like radio stations with it. You can set up your own podcasts, you know, and you can find communities that have similar values that are exploring a technology that can help you share code that you can cut and paste into your own, into your own projects, and and proprietorial, in a way, I suppose a good example is like Apple, where you've got iTunes, where you're kind of caught within that framework. And so even though people are paying for the music, they are limited in how they can use it, and so they can only use it within those systems. And that's a proprietorial system, and in a way that's the same as everyday life. So in a sense you're being owned. You're paying to be owned. And in a way that's what society's doing, and that you have to survive, but you have to pay to be accepted. And in a way, free and open source culture is a grassroots culture. A good example, I'd say, is mixtape culture, where you can have control over the music on your own terms and do a lovely mix of music on a tape machine and with all your mates, you know, and all that stuff. And that claiming a technology is that you're controlling directly its politics and the values around that technology. We did a project called $0 Laptop, where we got people sending us all their old laptops, and we just recycled them and went to homeless centres and taught people how to use the software, and a lot of them got jobs through it and stuff like that. So that was an emancipatory process. The pun that we always had is don't do it yourself, do it with others. And it's like DIY, in a sense, literally says do it yourself, which is fine, because it doesn't really mean do it yourself. It means adapt something where you're doing something. It could be like home improvements, or it could be within kind of activist culture, it's something else. It really means about, you know, you can build your own toilets, eco toilets, you can farm your own land, you can build your own house, you can... The DIY aspect, do it with others, which we introduced 2006, is a fit, which is very much a kind of originally a technological critique of people being alone on their computers all the time, and where we can actually collectively change culture and challenge hierarchy. And so DIY was very much where artists got together, and they would collectively, mutually curate, decide what technology they wanted to use, create systems of curation which were peer-to-peer. And so you're doing it with others rather than just doing it for yourself, and it kind of created a culture that was much more inclusive.
Complex days dominates purpose and will. 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 We can buy today's invalid lost thrill. Package feelings with processed tears. Market visions blinding valid fears. You've taken stolen with suburban pace. Expelling reality, replacing with mace. Ironic grins dominate process screams. Muff Muffled, controlled by monitored screens. Muffled, controlled by monitored screens.
Furtherfield started in '96, and it was really that at that time you had Brit art that was dominating the consciousness of the art world at that time, which Saatchi and Saatchi were funding apartheid in South Africa, and loads of artists just weren't thinking about any of that politics of who was funding them and critiquing it, and it's really getting on our nerves. And so you had Damien Hirst wanking on about how amazing he is, you know, and so people that made a decision not to do that were left behind, not to be funded by these fascists, really. And so everyone just conveniently, the people that got quite well known, conveniently snorted their way to the top, you know, and so that kind of thing. And we just were against that. We wanted a much more grassroots arts culture that was asking questions and sharing values of the very people that were dominating art culture at that time. And so Furtherfield was formed as a kind of starting point with Ruth Catlow and myself, and then we started building a community, and we had to learn all the technology ourselves, all the coding ourselves, and started creating online platforms where communities can go online to collaborate, code together, they could make art together in real time, and just a whole new thing opened up from Furtherfield. And then there was lots of other dotted groups that were kind of a little bit different to us, but we connected up with them, and yeah, and so we've worked. Most of our work has been about showing art that has something to say, and they've been hybrid exhibitions, really. When we do an exhibition, so in other words, it's not just about technology; it's about the ideas that are being discussed. So, for instance, when lots of people were being bombed by drones in Afghanistan, with their weddings, you know, like 50 people just been demolished in seconds by drones. Well, we were in a place where in Finsbury Park, in a gallery in the park, and a common space, where around that area there's nearly 200 different languages. So we decided to say, okay, what is this about drones? And this was like 2012, and we had a drones exhibition and drones workshops to explore how military drones are shifted around illegally around the world. And we just all created this map with loads of people in the community that their own families have been killed by the very drones that they're researching. And so in a way our art was about working with other people to answer questions, and you create the art out of that. And so that could be something that's technical, and you show that piece of work, or it could be a photograph, it could be a poem, it could be anything, as long as it fits the theme of the show that you're doing. But we mixed it up a bit, so you didn't feel that you were being dominated by technology, like it was like a BMW showroom or something, you know, showing off. It wasn't about the genius of the artist, about it. Again, it's collective genius. It's about learning stuff together through the exhibitions, where at the end of it you feel emancipation. You can walk out empowered. it's inherent in me that I just do not have the ability to fit in. I like people that are asking questions about their own lives and about everything around them, and I just feel they're more interesting, and they're going through struggles, and because I've been through struggles, I can immediately connect up with them. And so just through living experience, I think a lot of the artwork and the kind of line that you're talking about has always been there. You know, and I think it's always about learning from the struggle, and how that can empower you. And you realise that not everyone's like that. Everyone talks about the nihilism of punk. Well, which is true. But I found it very positive because it allowed more room for people to claim a larger culture, which working class people at the time didn't have. They didn't have something that they can believe in. All they had was poverty and no jobs or crap jobs and boring telly and violent families or depressed families. And so as soon as punk came, it blasted a whole wall and a whole group of people like the Specials and really amazing bands, Selector and the Jam, and they were the well-known ones, and all the other stuff like Crass and and all the other punk stuff that happened, and like Chumbawamba, and was equally as exciting, and it just you could find a space for yourself to belong somewhere, and also tweak. You probably had a collective belief system that everyone kind of connected up with, and then you had your own version of it, and that was what's so good about punk. You can shape it to your own. There wasn't a rule book, and it wasn't misogynist. You had loads of the Slits and Susie and the Banshees and loads of excellent bands. And it's all about people claiming their own culture on their own terms with others. Which and that's just one positive example. I suppose that's the strongest link again to what Furtherfield is. And it's about demolishing the hierarchy that controls your life, which is what punk has always done, and do it yourself and do it with others, and always find a way to survive and get through the struggle and build something positive out of it. Some of the bands I was in at the time, Hilana Hex, as you'll know, which was caused a minor stir in Southend, and was very much like a public image band, really. A little bit gothy, and but quite fun. And we toured and played in places like Grand Hotel, Focus, and some other venues. Blue Boar. My rhythm box was stolen then, and as what happens in gigs, and I know who stole it as well. And then with another band called I Despise, which is a very experimental punk jazz band in a way, because some of the musicians were quite jazzy, but they were quite experimental, and they were into like music like The Residents and Henry Cow and all that stuff. Other bands. I was in Mummy's Wardrobe with Stephen Dobson, which was kind of not really officially a band, but it was just a bedroom band, and where we just used to meet up and make music in our bedrooms, which was great fun. It's interesting, the spirit of that time in a way hasn't died, it's just developed and mutated and changed, but that's, I think the spirit of that is hacking. It's a cultural hack, And so it's always been there. It's like the word hacking, it's always been there. It's just it's had a different resonance through different ages.
I bought this game. Let's play another.
I want some chocolate.
You're boring.
I'm bored.
You smell.
I know.
Let's raise Mummy's wardrobe and try on all her clothes. We could be grown-ups when she's away. By putting on her dresses, we could be just like her. Put on her shoes.
Look, I'm so tall.
Put on her skirt.
I'm just like her.
Auntie says we're just like Mummy. Daddy seems to find that funny. But we'll wipe that smile away, because we never want to be like him. No, 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 never ever want to be like that man. I look more like Mummy.
You don't.
I look like Daddy.
You're a boy.
I'm so
You can't be
pretty.
her.
I want to be Mummy's girl.
No, you're
I
not.
want to be Mummy's girl. I like Mummy more than you. People say you're just like Daddy. You smell. I'm pretty. I'm the girly.
You're not. I am.
Go away. Let's raid Mummy's wardrobe and try on all her clothes. Ooh, we can be grown up when she's away. By putting on her dresses, we can be just like her. Put on her shoes.
Look, I'm so tall.
Put on her skirt.
I'm just like her.
Auntie says we're just like Mummy. Daddy seems to find that funny. But we'll wipe that smile away, because we never ever want to be like him. No, never 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 want to be like him. Let's raid Mummy's wardrobe and try on all her clothes. We can be grown-ups when she's away. By putting on her dress, we can be just like her. Put on her shoes.
Look, I'm so tall.
Put on her skirt.
I'm just like her.
I'm more like Mummy. You're a boy. You're a boy. I'm more like Mummy. I look like her. Smell like her.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the You Better Hear podcast. On this show, you heard the voice of Marc Garrett, whose new book, Feral Class, is available from minorcompositions.info. You also heard the sounds of The War Against Imagination by Marc Garrett, Oshna by Grey Flowers, Don't Trust Those Teeth Across the Seas and Skies, Give Us Back Our Soul, and Clammy and Deluded by Marc Garrett, and Mummy's Wardrobe by Mummy's Wardrobe, 2025 remix by Tosca Wilde. The theme song, You Better Hear, is by Southend's first punk band, The Machines, from their True Life EP on Wax Records, released in 1978. Thanks to Mark and Ruth Catlow and Paul Brown for technical support. I'm Graham Burnett. Look forward to seeing you all again soon.